Imagine buying a house and knowing something immediately. This will never make you rich, not 5 years from now, not 20 years from now, not because your neighborhood became hot, not because demand exploded, not because prices doubled. Your home will never be your biggest asset. No appreciation, no speculative upside, no flipping, no bidding wars driven by investors, just a house, a roof, a kitchen, a bedroom, a place to live. And at first, that sounds fair, maybe even ideal, because for millions of people, housing stopped feeling like shelter a long time ago. It became competition. Prices climbing faster than wages, investors buying properties in bulk, corporations turning neighborhoods into portfolios, and for ordinary buyers, the dream of homeownership started feeling less like a milestone and more like a race they were losing. So naturally, the idea sounds simple. If houses couldn't be investments, would homes finally become affordable again? Would prices fall? Would families win? Would housing finally return to what it was supposed to be? Maybe. But here's the part most people miss. Housing isn't just shelter anymore. It became one of the largest economic systems in modern society. And if houses stop functioning as investments, you're not just changing home prices, you're changing one of the deepest financial engines in the economy. This is what if, and here's what would happen if houses couldn't be investments. At first, the idea feels almost perfect. If homes couldn't be used to generate wealth, speculation would shrink. No buying multiple houses just to sit on them. No hedge funds buying entire neighborhoods. No investors treating homes like stocks. No flipping properties just because scarcity drives prices higher. And suddenly, something shifts. Demand from speculation could fall. Artificial price pressure could weaken. And for first-time buyers, that could feel like oxygen. More inventory, less competition, lower barriers. For families who simply want a place to live, housing could start feeling possible again. And emotionally, that resonates deeply because housing feels different than other assets. People can accept someone investing in stocks or businesses or technology, but homes feel personal. They're tied to safety, identity, community, belonging. So when housing becomes a financial game, it often feels like something human was turned into strategy. And removing investment from housing sounds like restoring balance. Homes become homes again. Not wealth vehicles, not leverage, not speculation, just shelter. And for many people, that sounds like justice. But here's where the system gets more complicated. Because investment doesn't just raise prices, it also creates supply. Developers don't build thousands of homes without expected returns. Builders don't take on massive projects without profit. Banks don't finance construction without upside. Private capital often funds expansion because housing can generate wealth. And once you remove that incentive, you change more than speculation. You change motivation. Because if housing stops functioning as an appreciating asset, fewer people may rush to buy for profit. But fewer institutions may rush to build for growth too. Which means one problem may shrink while another begins? Yes. Prices could stabilize, but construction incentives may weaken. And over time, that matters. Because affordable housing doesn't just depend on lower demand, it also depends on enough supply. And supply often follows capital. Think about what happens when future appreciation disappears. If buying a home doesn't build wealth, people still buy for necessity, but fewer buy for opportunity. That can absolutely reduce speculative pressure. Prices may cool, markets may stabilize, bubbles may shrink. But now, zoom out. If developers know homes won't produce strong returns, some projects become less attractive. Large-scale developments slow. Luxury overbuilding may shrink. Certain markets may cool dramatically, and in some places, new construction could decline, because when upside shrinks, risk becomes harder to justify. So over time, housing may become cheaper in one way, while becoming slower to expand in another. And that creates a new tension. How do you keep homes affordable without weakening the systems that create enough homes? There's also household wealth, because for decades, for many middle-class families, a home wasn't just shelter, it was their savings account, their backup plan, their retirement strategy, their emergency collateral, their inheritance. For millions, home equity became the largest source of personal financial security. And if homes stop appreciating, that entire model changes. Families may need alternative ways to build wealth. Retirement systems may feel more pressure. Savings habits may shift. Investment behavior may become more complex. Because not everyone understands stocks, or business ownership, or private markets. Real estate often became the most accessible wealth-building tool for ordinary people. So removing housing as investment could absolutely reduce one form of inequality, while also removing one of the most familiar paths many families use to climb financially. There's also generational wealth. Parents often pass homes to children. Property has historically transferred stability across generations. If housing stops functioning as a wealth asset, that chain changes too. Not necessarily worse, but fundamentally different. There's also renting, because not everyone buys, and rental systems still require ownership structures. So if private investors exit, who fills the gap? Governments, co-ops, non-profits, large regulated systems? Because housing demand never disappears. People will always need places to live. So removing housing as investment doesn't remove housing economics, it redesigns them. Housing affects construction, mortgages, banking, insurance, retirement, consumer confidence, local taxes, municipal budgets. Entire industries move around housing. When home values rise, many homeowners feel wealthier. They borrow, spend, renovate, invest. This is often called the wealth effect. And whether people realize it or not, housing values influence economic behavior far beyond housing itself. So if homes stop functioning as appreciating assets, consumer psychology changes too. People may become more financially cautious. Borrowing patterns may change. Banks may lend differently. Economic momentum may shift. And suddenly, you're not just changing shelter, you're changing behavior across multiple systems. And then something deeper changes. The meaning of ownership itself. For decades, buying a home symbolized progress, a financial milestone, a path upward, a wealth ladder. But if homes become purely functional, that dream changes. Home ownership may still matter, but differently. Less as transformation, more as stability. And while that could reduce some inequality, wealth doesn't disappear. It reallocates to stocks, private equity, businesses, technology, other appreciating systems, which means people who already understand capital may simply shift faster. And those without access may still struggle. Because inequality isn't always eliminated when one wealth vehicle disappears. Sometimes it just moves somewhere else. So what began as a fairness solution becomes something much larger. Yes, housing could become less speculative. Yes, prices might stabilize. Yes, homes may become more accessible. But housing was never just shelter. It became a major economic layer, a wealth engine, a behavioral engine, a security engine. And removing investment from housing doesn't just change prices, it changes incentives, construction, savings, retirement, wealth mobility, and social expectations. At this point, something else becomes clear. The real question isn't just should houses be investments? It's this: if ordinary people lose one of the biggest wealth-building tools they've historically had, what replaces it? Because if housing stops building wealth, and nothing equally accessible replaces it, then affordability may improve, while opportunity changes shape entirely. So the question isn't just, would homes become cheaper? It's deeper than that. It's about what housing actually is. Shelter, security, wealth, mobility, opportunity. Because once houses stop being investments, they may become more affordable. But affordability alone doesn't automatically replace the economic role housing once played. And maybe the real question is this: if homes stop being one of the most accessible paths to wealth, what does the middle class build on next?